Good Yontif, everyone. Gemar Tov, a good ceiling for all of us. Thank God, reciting Shechianu this year, as we're doing it, I'm realizing it's Shechianu every year, because we think about all the years of our lives. Please God, we've had the privilege, the zchut to live, and what it's been like to be back here another year, those who are not with us here at this time, but also what a Shechianu it is this year. It's never been a year in our lives, at least our lives, certainly here on the Bima, like this year. So but thank God, we can thank God and say, thank you for helping us reach this moment and have this ability to be together, through the technology as we've talked about. Tov. What about tonight? What are we going to talk about in Kol Nidre, the holiest night of the year throughout the entire Jewish world? Everyone is davening that beautiful, beautiful prayer of Kol Nidre. The title of this sermon, my focus, is Jewish Pandemic Advice. What would be the Jewish people's advice to the world if they were asked, or even unsolicited, okay, for advice? What is the Jewish people, what's our take with how to deal with COVID-19? What would be, there's a lot of different, we have a lot of opinions, as you know. Could offer a lot of thoughts about this, but I want to say, if I had to get it down to like a kernel, what would be the one piece, if someone said one piece of Jewish pandemic advice, what would it be? And here's how I want to start, so follow me here. We just davened, actually Rabbi Jenny did beautifully, Kol Nidre. And Kol Nidre is a haunting melody. It's like Misinai. It's been, it's a very old melody, and it really haunts the heart and the soul. But when you look at the words of Kol Nidre, if you ever actually read them carefully, Kol Nidre means all vows, and it talks about the fact that we may have made vows in the prior year that we perhaps did not follow through on, and please, God, forgive us for those vows. And actually, some versions say, may we not make vows in the year to come that we don't fulfill upon. Depends on the version. But this idea that this famous prayer with the beautiful melody focuses on vows and breaking vows. And, vows are not just like promises. They're kind of like something Jewish law. Not many people actually make those kind of vows today and haven't made them for a while, certainly our congregation, our community. So there's a lot of questioning about what is so powerful about this prayer, all vows. And by the way, why is it here? Why is it the first thing that we do on Yom Kippur? And why is it this whole service is called Kol Nidre after that prayer? So again, the melody is haunting. Clearly the melody has had a big piece of it. But the words itself are peculiar. Okay. Hold. Now there's a question. What's up with vows? Why we got vows in there? Why is it so important? Why this night? If God willing, I do this right, at the end, it'll be part of the Jewish pandemic advice why we keep Kol Nidre in there. Okay, let me explain. Here's how I'm going to explain it. When we write a Torah scroll, a Sefer Torah, maybe not we, but it's called a Sofer or Soferet, and we've actually been blessed here at Beth Meyer to have the privilege of Sofrim, writers, special scribal artists come and fix our Torah scrolls. Actually, on a yearly basis it happens. Some of our congregation know very, very well. And this person or persons, they take a very steady hand. It's an artistic job. It's one where you really an artisan's work, where you go and fill in all of the letters beautifully. And we've actually done here at Beth Meyer, maybe you've seen with the kids, sometimes we actually do religious school and show the letters. That same person also does parchments called a klaf or klafim for mezuzahs, inside the mezuzah we put on the doorposts, and also to fill in the boxes of leather we wear and wrap around our arms and in between our eyes. All of those are the arts of writing special parchments. When the Midrash says, when you write these parchments, when you take the black ink and write all these things, it says apparently 2,000 years ago in the Middle East, in ancient Palestine, there were two main options of what you could write all those letters with, including the letters we have in our own Sefer Torah here at Beth Meyer. You either could use a reed, which is kind of like a little fibrous little, plant that kind of is next to the water. You might think of the Jordan River or something, little reed. Or you could use the branch of a cedar tree. The rabbis say, we in the Jewish community always choose the reed. Actually, up to this day, most Sofrim still use a reed, dip it, to write their Torah scrolls. Not everyone, that's a whole halachic discussion, but most people do. Okay. Why? Why do they pick the reed and not the cedar? What's up with the cedar? What's wrong with the cedar? What's right about the reed? What's going on here? Well, we need to kind of have a little, Talmudic boxing match here, okay, right? We'll put in one corner the cedar. Now, those of you know cedar in Hebrew is an erez, And there's actually beautiful lines in the whole Tanakh, especially the book of Psalms, about the cedars of Lebanon. And the cedar is a glorious, majestic tree, a very large canopy, grows very high. In fact, often when the Psalms talk about the trees of Lebanon, it says these cedars are the sign of strength. They are powerful. They're often also, by the way, on their own. They're very separated from other trees. So it's kind of, you can see it's kind of stark in the distance. It is a sign of strength. And what's the reed? The reed is this relatively small, plant, I guess you say. Like, not a tree, it's a plant, like a little, And while it may start out being on its own, like at the beginning, it's in clusters and in bunches all the time. It's like you never see a reed really by itself, at least for a long time. And the reed, where the cedar is majestic and strong and tall, and even has the fragrance of cedar, which is like, still to this day we use, reed has like no smell. It's short in stature. It blows back and forth. It's not a sign of this majestic strength. So you're thinking, rabbis, get with the program. Why aren't you making the cedar strong, pretty, and on its own? And why are you picking the reed? So what do the rabbis say? The cedar tree needs a lot of water. The cedar tree has very shallow roots. When a very strong wind comes in, it in fact can lift up the cedar because of its shallow roots and because of its size and its canopy and knock it right over. The cedar is stiff, and therefore a strong wind, but not the reed. The reed is flexible. The wind can blow extremely hard. The reed never, ever breaks. When it comes to the reed, well, we're the people of the reed, okay? It's not about what it's like when things are in good weather. It's about when the winds come. When the winds come, who will bend but will not break? And reeds won't break because reeds cluster together in community. Whereas the cedar looks so strong on its own, it'll fall. But a reed just moves with its partners and builds community together. This year, when I think about Jewish advice in pandemic, I want to give two examples of what I see par excellence. I imagine you'll agree with me, of what it's like or what it means, Jewish advice, to be flexible, to go with the wind, even when it's blowing very hard. What's an example that's relevant immediately right now is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. May her memory be for a blessing. What a tremendous tzaddiket. What an unbelievable model of a Jewish person that we all can and do look up to and sorely, sorely miss and wish her family only the deepest condolences. Just a few notes. Some of you know we want to offer, of course, to the Rabin's family, members of our congregation who are direct relatives of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We offer our condolences to her family. But also we had the privilege at the Rabin's daughter's Benot Mitzvah a number of years ago where she came up literally to this spot right here and offered an aliyah to the Torah. And it was so moving and so powerful. And even though she's relatively short in stature, like the reed, she's powerful. There's nothing soft about this woman. And what's powerful with Bader Ginsburg is, like the reed, she had a lot of winds blow in her life. And I'm telling you stories that I'm sure you have read over many years, but certainly in the past weeks. One of them, I had the privilege of going with our daughter, Meyer, to see her just maybe a year ago speak at Meredith College. She told a great story that when she was on the court as the second female justice, that Sandra Day O'Connor was still on the court at that time, and there were two female justices, and some of the attorneys would come forward to offer their, plaintiffs and offer their, defenses and offer their, their opinions before the court. And maybe out of their nervousness, if you want to give them kaf zechut and compassion, but probably because maybe, frankly, sexism, they would confuse the two women justices. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg said at this event at Meredith College, she said she turned to one attorney at one point who made this mistake for the umpteenth time, and she said to the attorney, sir, Sandra Day O'Connor is from the West, and she grew up with horses and is a cowgirl. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm Jewish. I speak 2 words at the time. I speak 2 words in the time she speaks 1. I speak much, much faster. There is no way to confuse us. Please call me by my proper name. Okay. What I mean from that is talk about strength. She was not going to take it from them. I love that story. In fact, some of the students were saying afterwards, turned to each other and said, "You can't handle the Ruth," which was actually very cute. All right. But what also Ruth Bader Ginsburg was about was handling adversity. The stories that you probably saw in her obituary, if you didn't know already, that, she was a valedictorian of her high school class. On the day she's supposed to give the speech on the graduation day, her mother dies. Her husband, Marty, alav shalom, a real tzaddik in his own right, gets in a car accident and is hurt in law school, has cancer in law school, and basically she has to both do law school, raise a family, and take care of her husband all at the same time. Then she graduates, top of her class, etc., and no New York law firm would take her because she was a woman. And she told the story at Harvard Law School when she was one of 9 women in her class, and the dean called those women together, had a special meeting to discuss basically why they were there and to justify, the way she explained it, justify to me, why are you taking the spot of a man? Why should we basically keep you here? She dealt with blatant sexism over and over again. But not like a cedar, didn't knock her down. She bent and kept on going. She pushed back. And I want to just say, there's that great line she said, what's the difference between like a bookkeeper from Brooklyn and a Supreme Court justice? 1 generation. That is an unbelievable statement about America, about the Jewish community, but really about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Because she did as a Jewish woman, as a Jew, as a woman, as the children of immigrants, she kept bouncing back and kept pushing forward. The last thing I want to say is that, she was a pioneer. So you could say she was like a cedar in the fact that she was like on her own. And it's true. For a time, she certainly was. But did you see when her casket was lying in state the past couple days? Those that served as shomrim and shomrot, the traditional Jewish practice of always being by the body and never leaving someone alone, were her disciples, were her clerks, were her students. She was known to make time for all kinds of people, especially within the Jewish community, and especially women leaders, to give them time, to guide them, to give them inspiration. So she started like the reed starts on its own. Like there's one reed begins next to the water, but over time, it's in a cluster. And that's what she understood. She understood what it meant to be path-breaking. You have to be flexible and bounce against the wind. But in the end, you're going to be strengthened by being surrounded by people together in a community. So that's example 1. What's example 2? Guys, this year, if you could have seen me and Rabbi Jenny this summer, when this pandemic, earlier than that, but earlier this summer, when we started thinking about the Chagim and these holidays, and Oy vey, how are we going to do this? And the High Holiday Task Force began to meet, and the board and the president, we're doing all. It reminded me of the old telegram, my favorite telegram from the Jewish guy in the army, sends it to his parents back in Brooklyn. And all the telegram says is, start worrying, details to come, we were definitely in the worry department. It was definitely down with the worry. Worry about everything. How's this going to happen? What are we doing? And no question, the issue around the finances of our synagogue was high in our minds. As Rabbi Jenny mentioned in her sermon and drasha on Rosh Hashanah, was concerns about the staff, her position, our position, other staff, what would happen, what would the economy collapse? And there are people in our congregation, sadly, who have been devastated, furloughed, people have lost jobs, those that are struggling before the pandemic, it's accentuated by that. We saw the earth was falling. And when this part of the High Holiday Task Force had a fundraising task force, beautifully led by Grace Kaplan and Jonah Kaplan's participation and others in that committee, came forward and said, we have this idea, a new campaign. We can't do Kol Nidre appeal. We'll do this, open the gates. And, it's change, We're into tradition in here. I've heard tradition's a part of our practice, right? What will happen? And what happened is you blew us away. You blew us away. People in this congregation who are struggling and in need and and don't have the resources in this moment, we said, how will we take care of them? But you said, many of you, hundreds of you said, because everyone has been affected by this pandemic. No one has gone through this unscathed. But those who say, I feel blessed. On Yom Kippur and Kol Nidre, I feel blessed. I feel fortunate that it's not worse for me. It's my privilege to give to this congregation, to support all the needs, and to make sure that no member of Beth Meyer, no Jew, no family is left behind. In a moment where people might have gone on their own to be like their own cedars, you, Beth Meyer, said, we're going to cluster like the reed. And even though we bent, we pushed back. And I cannot describe the depth of mine and Jenny's and everyone in this congregation's leadership's gratitude to you for your generosity. You've done the ultimate mitzvah, but you've done it in the way that Jews have done it for thousands of years, is when things get difficult. We don't give up on each other. We actually hug each other closer. We don't abandon people in our community who are struggling, because the truth is, guys, there are people in our congregation that are breaking. But we said, like that reed, we will hold on to them. And when the winds blow, we will help lift them up. It's not just the one cedar standing tall. It's the group and cluster of reeds standing and going with the winds together. This congregation has demonstrated that, and it blows us away. We cannot, not that we can't believe it, it actually can believe it. It's just that it's the exceptional way, raising nearly $200,000. $200,000 through this appeal is just beyond words. And I want to say yasher koach to each and every one of you who gave. Okay, let me come back. I told you why we're the people of the reed, not the people of cedar. We cluster, we're flexible. That's pandemic advice in this challenging time. Don't be the tall and strong on the outside. You know, RBG was relatively small, 5'1". But my God, you don't want to mess with her in a courtroom, and her intellect was of the highest. Let's come back to Kol Nidre. I told you, this prayer, Kol Nidre, all valves, what's it about? You know, why is it here? Yes, the melody's powerful, but like the meaning, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. In fact, some congregations in history took it out of the prayer because they thought it didn't make any sense. But we keep it in. Why? Because the history of that prayer, although it's actually, academics debate it, but the number one theory is that in the 7th century in Spain, when we were being forced, the Jewish community was forced conversions to Christianity at the price of death, basically saying, either become Christian or you will be killed. Jews in that area of Spain said, okay, we will make a vow to be Christian on the outside. But on the inside, in their private homes, they continued to practice Judaism in secret. And those Jews made this prayer to say, God, on Yom Kippur, we feel terrible that we had to do this in order to save our lives and save the Jewish people. But we're saying here, please don't take our vows too seriously. Please let us, we don't believe in them. They're not real oaths. We are just saying, they're just lip service. And they huddled together in hidden ways, in small synagogues you can imagine in Spain in the Middle Ages, and they prayed this prayer. They, in that way of publicly finding a way to deal with anti-Semitism, but privately never giving up. That's like the reed. They were flexible to save lives, but they didn't give up. Never. They bent, but they do not break. And they came together because of community. Together held each other. So what is Jewish people's pandemic advice? Is we're going to have to be flexible here. We have been. Clearly, what we're doing here is flexible. Our leading services. We're going to have to go with the flow. Wearing masks, distancing, the 3 W's, okay? That's all going to be, and we're going to have to use technology, and we're going to have to be careful, but we're going to find ways to blow shofar out of Falls Lake. And we're going to find ways to do Yom Kippur like this. And we're going to use technology as we can. And we're going to hear, Tashlich with safely gather for Sukkot in ways that we can in the Sukkah, for those that are able to do so. We'll find ways to use Zoom with creative pictures and songs and melodies. That's being flexible. It's not giving up. It's not letting the winds blow us over. Being flexible enough to be like the reed that writes in every Sefer Torah, every mezuzah klaf, every tefillin klaf, because we're the people of the reed, and that is the message, that it can't just be alone. It's got to be in community. And together, with your tzedakah, together with your prayers, together with realizing we stand on the shoulders of giants like RBG, Alei Shalom. Hopefully this will inspire us. I know it will. This Yom Kippur alone, it will inspire us to go forward and deal with this pandemic in the long haul. Eventually, God willing, it will pass. Someday it will pass. And what we'll say is, the Jewish people have been through things like this before, great people before, terrible things. We bent, but together we will never break. And that's why we're the people of the reed. And that is the Jewish pandemic advice. Good Yantif, Gamar Chatima Tova.